Over the years, I've been here on the Senate floor many times, bringing up the challenges of rural America, whether it's delivering quality health care or investing in vital infrastructure that supports our businesses, or connecting our schools to the 21st century. I've worked hard to make sure that rural states like Montana have a loud voice in the United States Senate. And that is why I'm so frustrated with the recent comments made by National Trade Council Director Peter Navarro. Mr. Navarro last week characterized the economy uncertainty that tariffs are causing the American farmer and rancher as nothing more than a rounding error. Mr. Navarro has an important position. He's a trade advisor and he's a strategist for the President of the United States. And he believes the tariffs that are harming Montana producers equate to nothing more than a rounding error. The statement is inaccurate, it's insulting, and it is dismissive of rural America. If Mr. Navarro truly believes that his comments are true, he has a lot to learn about what's going on across this country. I'm willing to bet he hasn't been to a farm, a ranch, a stockyard, a grain elevator facility recently, maybe never. And I'm quite sure he hasn't picked rock in north central Montana. I don't think he would call the administration's trade war is a rounding error if he met with Montana's home builders and construction workers and small business owners, farmers and ranchers that are being squeezed by the rise of the cost of doing business now because of these tariffs. I urge Mr. Navarro to leave the swamp, come to Billings or Fort Benton or Dutton, Montana, and get an accurate perspective on how these tariffs are impacting family farms and ranches and businesses across my great state. If he or anyone else in Washington were to speak with the folks that are most impacted by their trade policies, here's what they will hear. In ag country, they will say, you know what? Our commodity prices weren't that cherry to begin with, and now we're seeing them drop even more. We're seeing our input costs go up. The head of the Montana grain growers, a lady by the name of Michelle Erickson-Jones, testified recently that they didn't buy a grain bin. Now, this is a facility, so Mr. Navarro knows, a grain bin is a facility that is made out of steel that stores grain. The cost went up on that very simple structure 20% over the last year. Forterra in Billings, Montana, builds bridges, have seen bridge structures like I-beams that are reinforced with rebar. They have seen the cost of rebar go up double digits just recently. And in fact, in Missoula, Montana, where they're building a new library to export information out of, very good thing for that community, and any community as far as that goes, they passed a bond issue. Their costs went up more than $700,000 just because of the increased cost of steel. Those are the input costs. We've been working generations and generations to develop markets all around the world, as we do live in a world that's getting smaller every day. And we're losing those export markets. We're losing certainty. And without certainty, you cannot plan for the future. Many of these agricultural farms and ranches have been in the family for generations, as mine has been. And we hope to pass it along to the next generation. But if you create enough uncertainty, that will simply be impossible, and that's exactly what's going on in this country today. In the 1980s, we saw family farm after family farm go broke. Started, by the way, with the grain embargo. We're seeing that same scenario being repeated today if we don't change the way we're doing business. So I ask, what is the end game? I don't know that what's going on in the White House right now gives me any sort of hope that there is an end game. So here are the facts. According to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, the ongoing trade war will threaten $20 million in Montana exports alone, just Montana exports. Impact 140,000 Montana jobs. We have just over 1 million people that live in Montana. 140,000 jobs is a lot of jobs. And only in Washington, D.C. is a $20 million drop in Montana's exports and $140,000 potential impact with Montana's jobs be considered a rounding error. Just 5 days ago, after he called the impact of the tariffs a rounding error, the administration announced that taxpayers are going to pay $12 billion to offset the financial impacts of these trade policies. Now, unlike drought or hail or floods or insects or disease and other challenges that farmers and ranchers must deal with each year, this disaster is man-made. It's government-made. Make no mistake, this is a self-inflicted problem, and it's a financial problem that is a direct result of the tariffs and irresponsible policy. Now, in order to try and ease the pain caused by these reckless tariffs, the administration has decided to further rattle the marketplace with an infusion of $12 billion of taxpayer money. Now, I will tell you that folks in production agriculture want to sell their products, not depend upon undependable, erratic payments from the government. I've never, ever met a farmer who wants to receive their paycheck from the government. They want to earn their paycheck. They want to earn it from the free market. They want a free market. They want places they can sell their products. They want to raise the products, in my case, in Montana's case, some of the finest agricultural products in the world, and they want to sell them to customers around the world, both at home and in markets across the earth. They don't want to collect cash payments from the government. It's not why they got into business. They want to get it from the marketplace. They want to get their living from the marketplace. These dollars are being used as a Band-Aid to stop the bleeding that is being felt by American farmers and ranchers as a direct result of these trade policies. This $12 billion is not going to help hold on to any markets. It will simply be a patchwork to get through the problems that the government has created today, that this administration has created. It won't provide long-term certainty. It won't provide them the ability to make long-term investments. It won't provide them the opportunity to pass the farm on to their children. It will provide temporary relief, and because of these trade policies, that temporary relief is important. But it is far from a real solution for the folks who give us food security and the folks who feed the world, our family farms and ranches. I will just say this. I have had conversations across the state of Montana over my tenure in the United States Senate. I can tell you that folks work hard. They work hard for their money. And they expect to be given a level playing field. But what we're seeing right now is we're seeing markets that we have worked a generation to create and to mold being given away to other countries. We're seeing infrastructure in other countries. It's not being focused at the United States and the products we produce, but it's being developed to do trade with other countries in the markets that they produce, sometimes those very same products that we produce. I was at a meeting the other night. They talked about the fact that in regards to Mexico, who buys more barley from Montana than any other nation in the world, and Canada, our #1 trading partner, that Mexico is setting down and they're negotiating and Canada isn't. It is interesting because we've heard this before. But as Mexico negotiates, they also signed a trade agreement with Argentina, to my knowledge, the first one ever, to be able to supply their people with food. That's a market that we need. And as far as Canada goes, I've had plenty of issues with Canada. The Canadian government knows that, whether it's softwood lumber, or whether it's grain grading for our products going north, or whether it's issues that revolve around the Columbia Water Treaty. But the fact is, this is our best friend in the world, and we need to treat them fairly. And in the process, make sure we have markets for the people in the United States. With that, Mr. President, I yield the floor.